I can show you the world.
And you can still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
Okay, good.
Cool.
Phew. Okay, sorry. I have like this old computer that was like $100 and
Hey, that's the best
sometimes
kind.
it's slow.
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Busy.
Good.
So we'll just switch it to audio only. That makes things move a lot smoother. So
Okay.
uh, I like your profile pic, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Uh, I've grown addicted to coffee, so I
Oh, really?
well, not addicted, but now I have to start my mornings with it. I never used to, but
hmm
my wife's always was the big coffee drinker of the two of us. But um, I worked at Land's End for 13 years answering phones, and I didn't want to drink soda anymore, and they had free coffee. So
Oh,
motivated
that's how
by
they get you.
being frugal, motivated by that, it was like, there you go, free coffee. Okay, it's a free beverage. So yeah, and then I got used to it, and then it's like, oh, this is actually really good. Now I'm buying like flavored coffees and shit. What's the most
Well,
cool?
being from this area, it's like everybody drinks coffee it's just a thing, it's part of the culture.
Oh, I imagine because you're in Seattle, so yeah,
Yeah.
you got a Starbucks like every other house, right?
Oh man, there was a time. I mean, it's still there's Starbucks everywhere, but there was a time they were like opening a Starbucks on every block, like
Wow.
really almost. I mean, there would be times where you could be at a Starbucks and see another one down the street, pretty much.
That's,
Yeah.
there's something just kind of wrong about that.
I know. I know.
I mean, I understand some Starbucks had long lines, but still. Uh, but we're getting at here, just in our little town of Stevens Point. We have Starbucks, um, and now we have the grocery store, which has gone through a couple owners, and the ones they have now, they revamped it to this kind of slightly upper scale grocery store. And part of the
Mm.
deal is they're putting a Starbucks in the front of it.
Oh.
I'm like, what? Really? It's a grocery store, really?
Oh yeah, there's Starbucks in a lot of the grocery stores here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
There's Starbucks every, I mean, the thing is, it's not just Starbucks. There's a lot
mhm,
of other kind of coffee shops, and there used to be a lot of like super good like Italian coffee shops, and I think that's why everybody in Seattle got really addicted to coffee. It's not so much like that anymore, but
mhm.
now there's like a lot of like kind of newer like hip kind of like different kind of brew places like there's like oh we cold brew or we do these pour over brews or like specialty kind of things.
Right. You kind of got it specialized now because you have so many
So many
coffee shops.
options,
Yeah.
yeah.
To kind
So,
of
but yeah, there's coffee everywhere. There's a place called Espresso Dental.
espresso dental.
Yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing.
What does all their dental paste have espresso in it or something?
It's literally, I'm not even kidding. It's a dentist's office that has a drive-through espresso attached. I mean, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Well, the doctors are always telling you, don't drink stuff that'll stain your teeth, and then they have an espresso drive-through window. I mean,
Right. I guess you
Chris,
go from one right into the other, or
I
you
well,
go from the coffee right to the dentist. I
I
don't
guess
know.
they're insuring business for, teeth whitening. They must have a contract with a teeth whitener
Yeah.
place. And so they're like, oh, I got a great idea. People will stain their teeth and just come in the door next door and we'll whiten them for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be like a burger joint having like a heart surgery
Yeah.
connected or something.
That'd be
Heart
awesome.
surgery burgers. But yeah, no, there is a place called Espresso Dental. I'm not even
That's
kidding.
great. That's crazy. So do you have a favorite coffee drink? Like, like one that you're like your go-to, or do you just drink whatever?
I usually get soy latte. I
Hmm.
I used to get all kinds of fancy different kind of drinks, and then the thing is you get burnt out,
Sure.
and then you're like, I just want drip coffee. So,
that's that's what I usually drink, drip coffee. The Walmart here, I know people say Walmart's evil, but my pocketbook really enjoys it. Because I went there and I got a drip coffee maker for, it was on sale clearance, $5.
mm,
I'm
oh my
like,
God.
I'm like, hell yeah. So I got that for my job at work because people, I mean, we had a coffee room in the break room that's provided for free, but I always seem to be the only one ever filling it, and it wasn't really the greatest coffee. So I asked.
Sometimes that free coffee, I mean, you have to worry about ulcers and stuff like that. You might be
Yeah.
getting the kind of the bottom of the barrel. Just
Well,
saying.
well, they did get a contract with a roaster in town. So
Oh, okay.
they started providing the coffee. So it got a little better, but like for the first couple years, they just got the basic packaged, bulk coffee, and it was
Yeah.
it was wet. Is what it was. It was wet with caffeine, and so that's why I drank
Oh
it
no.
in the morning. So
Oh my
but
goodness.
it got a little better. But now with my coffee maker in our office, we can have it in our office. I put it in there, and I have all different kinds. And so, Highlander grog and all this. And I'm not big on the big, huge, different mixes, but occasionally I'll have one. My friends used to own a coffee shop for a few years, and so used to purvey them often. And they've got one of those game lounges, where you go and you can pay money and you play on like a Xbox One or a
Oh, okay.
PS4 or whatever. You basically can play video games, and it's real cheap. But they're also a coffee shop, so they have coffee and a really good coffee and snacks and stuff. Because usually the younger kids, like on a weekend, will be there all day. So why not
Oh.
provide snacks and beverage? Because they also
Uh-huh.
have specialty sodas too, like here in Stevens Point, we've got a Point Brewery, that does beer, but they also do soda and some delicious root beer. So
Oh,
they
nice.
got that local, and they got other stuff too, like balls and
Mm.
squirt, and some of all the bottle type stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the Joneses and the ones that are like sugar drinks and such. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really cool place. They've been in business for quite some time now. A really great couple that run it, and but they got good coffee. But we've got it's a college town, so not only do we have two Starbucks, but we have probably downtown one, two, three, and now we're gonna have 4 or 5 coffee shops
Oh, okay.
in our small downtown area, and we've got a tea shop as well. So first time I ever saw that, but um,
Oh, that's
it's
nice.
yeah, it's similar to a coffee shop, but it's tea. So I'm like,
Yeah, I've
okay,
been to a tea shop.
yeah. The
But
only
the weird thing is there's no like close coffee shops oh, actually I'm totally lying. There's a Starbucks. I was gonna say there's not very many close coffee shops to my house. But now I'm remembering, yep, no, there
no,
is a Starbucks within walking
you
distance.
you looked out your window and go, oh no, wait, no, there's the
Oh
Starbucks.
yeah,
Okay, never
no wait.
mind. Did you hear who's moving next door? Who? Starbucks. Oh, really?
It was like that for a while here.
I bet. You always worry though with that much expansion. You're like something's gonna give, and they're gonna be,
Well, I
closing
think
it.
their quality's gone down.
Yeah, I mean, you're
I think that
gonna lose something, either your specialty or
yeah.
your quality or whatnot. I mean, not that they were great quality ever, but I don't know if it is like this on the coast, but we have Subway subs, and they're like everywhere. They're like the Starbucks of
Oh, uh-huh.
sandwich, because they're in gas stations, they're in the Walmarts, they're
Mm.
in
Oh yeah,
strip
we have
mall.
one. We have one in the Walmart, yeah.
Yeah, they're like everywhere are Subways, and the food's okay. I mean, it is fresh food and all, and you get your subs made your way. That's cool and all, but it's just kind of disturbing how many of them there are out there. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm like, all right, but you know, they, so okay, so we'll we'll get rolling here.
Sorry, I have a little cough. I'm trying not to cough.
Oh no, that's okay. You can. I can always. I
Just
can't
cut it out, edit it out.
We'll just fix it in post. So Derek hates that phrase. We'll just fix it in post. No, you won't. Do another take, please. Actually, before we get started, I just have to ask you one thing, because you are filmmaker, director, actress. How is that? I mean, I don't know if you follow at all more like a lot of mainstream film stuff, but the big hoopla with word got out that Robert Pattinson may be the Batman. And I mean, it was just not even really confirmed, but everybody rolled with it. Suddenly there's petitions saying, no, we don't want him. I mean, what does that do? I know he probably tries to ignore it, but what does that do to an actor or actress who may be wanting that role?
Yeah. I honestly, I feel like because I work on the other side of it, I mean, not anywhere near that scope, of course,
right?
But because I work like in the industry or whatever, I'm doing air quotes, by the way, but I feel like I see it totally differently.
Yeah.
Like I see it from his point of view, kind of, it's like for one thing, like, it's like he's an actor. That's his job. Actors got to act. You know what I mean? Like, that's his job. And it probably, it was a good, role. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably an exciting role for him to get, and then to have everybody be mad. And you know that the only reason why they're mad is because they didn't like the Twilight films.
And you know what? I fell into that hole for a little bit. I fully admit it, because I wasn't familiar with either one of the two, Robert Pattinson or Kristen Stewart. I wasn't really familiar with their work outside of Twilight, because that was their biggest thing. And I watched the majority of the Twilight films, and they're not good.
No, bad.
They're not good. And I realized, though, because after watching that, I saw Kristen Stewart in The Runaways, and I loved her in that.
Yeah, no, I think she's a good actress. Yeah.
And then I realized, watching some of her indie stuff, I'm like, she was a victim of a really poor script and director.
Yeah.
It was the same though with Snow White and the Huntsman too. She wasn't that good in the Huntsman, but I don't think it was the director. I think it was the director that apparently was her boyfriend at a time, but it was the directing or lack of directing for her, because the roles I have seen her in later on, like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Personal Shopper is freaking.
I haven't seen it. I want to.
Oh,
that's really good.
She is awesome, because it's basically her. She carries the whole film. We hardly ever leave her side, and she is phenomenal in that. And I've seen good stuff.
And how do you like the movie? I mean, I heard it's kind of creepy.
The movie
did you enjoy the movie?
Yeah, I dug the story. It's got a creepy atmosphere that just runs throughout, and it's one of those where you don't realize exactly what type of movie you're watching in the beginning, and then as you watch it unfold, you're like, holy crap, this thing is dark. You're not quite sure. And yeah, I dug it. I mean, it's one of those where it's a character piece, so there really isn't like action, like regular action. There's a lot of dialogue and performance by the actors. They're carrying it, because most of the set pieces and such are just a basic apartment or whatever. So, so it really falls on the shoulders of the actors, because listen to me like I know what I'm talking about, but it feels like it feels like it falls right on them, the story that they're telling, and she's just fantastic in it, And I've got my buddy Scott Menzel from We Live Film. He loves her. He's like, no, she's like. But it's just like Robert Pattinson. I've seen him in a couple of indie roles and stuff, and I'm like, he's good. It's like they just got bad stories.
Yeah,
they got bad. I mean, it was still the franchise. It was a big franchise, and it was helped, I'm sure, opened more doors for them, because it got them the name recognition. But they were victims, I think, of poor script and bad direction. And it shows you, if even good actors, if they don't have the right director, a lot of times their movie's still gonna blow.
Right. Yeah.
Or not hit it off like they wanted to, and
Yeah.
not showcase the performer.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering your opinion, because I'm like, man, it's got to be tough as an actor, and no one even said he was going to be it. It was like the internet blew up, and then like an hour after it blew up, there were people going, "Oh, whoa, whoa, wait, he's at the top of the list. He's not actually," and people already have like 50 petitions, and they're getting T-shirts ready saying "Not my Batman."
Oh my
know?
gosh.
But so it did put it in perspective. There was a meme going around about how every person who has ever been chosen as Batman, there's a fan outrage. It's almost like the Doctor Who, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
When I was young, I remember when Michael Keaton was going to be Batman,
oh
I
yeah,
thought that was ridiculous
right.
because I didn't hate him. I liked him, but I remembered him from Mr. Mom. Do you know what I mean?
He was a comedian. I mean, he was Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
He was the goofy guy. He was Beetlejuice. He was
Yeah.
like, how is he gonna pull it off? And
Right. Yeah. But I learned my lesson because I actually feel like he's the person I enjoy most as Batman.
for me, yeah, especially out of the movie Batmans, he is the one
Out of
that,
the movie Batmans, yeah.
yeah, out of the movie Batmans for sure, he's the one I enjoy the most as well. Um, Out of all of them, I'm just not quite sure why, but it's Keaton, it's how it was written or whatever. But yeah, so
Yeah, I don't know. He brings something to it though. And I'm not really exactly sure why either, but he
it,
makes it work.
I think it's because the way he plays his Bruce Wayne is not like the others or like the comics, in that
Mhm.
his Bruce Wayne is a grounded, kind of bumbling guy who is a down to earth guy who you're realizing he doesn't act fully rich, at least in the first one. You're like,
Right.
he's like your average Joe who just happened to fall into money, but he doesn't
Yeah.
really know how to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think he's more relatable.
he
Yeah.
is. He's more relatable. He's a little more regular Bruce Wayne-ish in the second one, where he's a little more serious, a little more straight in that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think he's awesome in it. That's why I liked Birdman so much. I'm like,
Oh yeah, he was so good in that.
oh,
I've kind of learned to like not put judgment because of stuff like that, because in the past I've been like, what? That sounds crazy. And then I've been really proven wrong and been like,
right.
oh, I need to just judge after I see it, not before.
The internet is a place for the young, and I am, at least by YouTuber standards, am old. So but I realize, I remember when I was 20 something, or even early 30s or whatever, you get decisions like that in film, and you're just, oh my god, it's like,
Yeah. And it's a
roar.
bigger deal to you in the moment than it should be.
Yeah. And then you get a little older, maybe a little wiser, not really wiser, but older, and you realize, oh, that really has no impact on me whatsoever, and I can go grab the film I really enjoy off my shelf and still watch it.
Right. Yeah,
So
it shouldn't be a part of my life if it does bother me, kind of thing.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of Birdman, though, I really want to ask you because
hmm,
I've worked in the theater for a long time. I
mhm,
worked in box office at a live theater, small one and a large one. And
cool.
I have another friend that when I originally saw Birdman in the theater, in the movie theater, with a
Mhm,
friend of mine that worked with a lot of actors, theater actors, and we thought it was just hilarious. Like we were
mhm,
dying and just laughing through the whole thing because there was a lot of common personality types that we recognized that were kind of being made fun of. And we actually didn't know. We're like, are other people going to get this? Like people that haven't been around, theater
mhm.
actors and the theater world. Did you grasp all that? Like all the like kind of pokes at the different sort of personalities and stuff?
Yeah, I picked up on it. Not I may have not caught all of them, but some of the personalities, just from knowing um, folks like yourself. And I have friends in the theater, and in college I had a number of friends in theater.
Okay.
I wasn't a theater major, but I had a bunch of friends who were, because
Yeah.
a mutual friend of mine got me into a improv comedy troupe that we had
Mm.
on campus called Delicious Ambiguity, which was taken from a Radner biography where she talked
Oh, okay.
about how comedy was. It was delicious ambiguity. You weren't quite sure. It was the thrill of not knowing what was going to be next. I think
Mm.
is the way it was put into context. Um, and that's what we kind of named our improv comedy troupe from. So I got to meet theater majors, even though at the time I was a biology major. I eventually I eventually turned comm and video production, but so I had, I saw some of those personalities or
Okay. I feel like you got it. Yeah.
heard stories as well, so yeah, I got most of the references and realized, I think some people didn't realize with Birdman that it was while it was
That it was a comedy.
while it was dramatic, it was satire. It was,
Mhm.
it was the industry kind of poking fun at itself, and
Yeah.
Michael Keaton poking fun at his Batman fandom of sorts.
That's true. Yeah.
I honestly think he was taking care of some inner demons that he might have had in
Could
that
be.
film, you know.
Yeah.
But Keaton was awesome in it, and I liked it. I love quirky films, so definitely. So, all right, so we'll get started here. I don't want to keep you too late. So yeah, let's get the
Okay.
episode going. It's just you and me tonight, so.
Okay.
Welcome, my friends, for journeying down the steps into the spoiler room tonight. And yes, we are continuing our month of looking at films where people do strange things with their minds. And this one is an interesting one because I pulled it out of the blue from the description. And I have a crew member with me tonight to talk about it who really enjoys this film. And we're talking about 1964 Children of the Damned, which, in all honesty, I didn't even realize existed. And to talk about this film is none other than filmmaker extraordinaire, musician. She wears many, many hats. Give it up for Tanya Atomic. Hello, Tanya. How are you?
Hello.
So glad you could join us this evening. And dead to rights, all honesty, it's true. I did not know this movie existed. I am, as everyone is, familiar with Village of the Damned, but not Children of the Damned. And yeah, I was surprised by this film. So since you are familiar with it, would you mind if you gave the synopsis of this interesting movie?
Yes, I have to give you a full disclosure though. I thought I'd seen this movie and I actually hadn't.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Because I'm a big dork. No, I'm a
No.
huge fan of Village of the Damned, and I've seen
Oh,
it
okay.
several times, like throughout my life.
Sure,
And I've
sure.
seen the 1995 version as well. And
Right.
I assumed that I had seen Children of the Damned because of how many times I'd seen Village of the Damned. But no, when I started watching it, I was surprised. I was like, oh, wait a second, this doesn't ring familiar.
Right.
And I thought I'd seen it. I even read the little
Yeah.
blurb and everything and thought I'd seen it, but no.
Well, I
I
can give it if you'd like then. That's,
well, I can give my take on it.
okay,
So
sure.
basically what happens is there's these children who are testing really well. The United Nations is kind of brought to the attention of the United Nations that there's these sort of genius children, and the weird thing is there's similarities. So that's kind of what the United Nations gets alerted about because they are children from all over the world, and the United Nations is like, hey, great idea. Let's get all these kids together in the same room and then do tests on them. And so they bring all the families together from all over the world. But when the kids meet, they have this sort of synergy and they have this telepathy. They can read each other's minds and they know. They have this scene where they tell the kids or they tell the parents, like, if you tell the kid one thing, all the kids know,
Mhm.
and then they test it out. And so they have this they're sort of like the Borg.
Mhm.
They have they're of one mind, and then they start to kind of defend themselves against the adults, and they harm people, and then the adults are trying to take action, and the kids all run away and live in this church. and they make their auntie or one of the kids' aunties come
Yeah.
with them to take care of them, basically. And should I tell? I mean, this is the
Go
spoiler.
for it. Yeah, go for it.
Everything. So, so the auntie's taking care of them, but she's like kind of under mind control, and they're living in the church and they're demanding food and stuff like that. And then the adults, I think is it the United Nations military that comes in? I got a little confused about that.
It's a little tough, muddied. I think it's more the British army is
Okay.
the British army is enlisted by the UN, asked by the UN to take care of this problem, is the impression I got.
So they come in and there's sort of a standoff between the army and the kids. And then this horrible thing happens where one of the guys falls asleep and accidentally sounds the charge to fire on the children.
Yeah.
And they do. And
it all goes to hell.
Yeah, they kill all the kids.
Yeah. This film is Britain hates children. Okay. It's what it is. Kids are evil. Whoever wrote this script was holding a grudge against their baby who kept them up at nights. The person who wrote this script, they're just, they hated kids. Well, actually, I guess it's based off of a novel by John Wyndham, who I think did Village.
It's the same novel.
Yeah, it's the same novel. Okay.
Yeah. This is my take on it. So what I think what happened, because the first Village of the Damned came out in 1960 from MGM.
Right.
And this Children of the Damned came out in I think either 63 or 64.
64.
64, also from MGM. And so my theory is that they had the rights to the book. And so since they had the rights and didn't have to pay again, they just decided to do another movie loosely based on the book, on the same story, but have it be a little bit different because it was just a couple years later. Right. That's kind of my take. I read it was like a thematic sequel, but it is not actually a true sequel.
No, it's not. It's like either a reimagining, almost like a reimagining of the story, or
I think so, yeah.
It's definitely an indirect sequel. I mean, you got the kids behaving in a similar way to the Village of the Damned kids, but you still have some of the themes running through here. With the kids and control and the adults versus the kids. And this was an interesting film. It's 1964, so it's in the midst of the Cold War. And Tanya, could you tell this was a story that was in the midst of the Cold War?
What it made me think of, and like at the end, it made me think of Kent State.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because I felt like that's what happened at Kent State, and those were children basically. And it really made me think of that as far as like world events.
Yeah, you're right. That does fit within this film, because there's a lot of things said in this film, which surprises me because this is actually kind of a hard film to find. I mean, I found it streaming on Vudu, but like for copies in that, I'm like, everybody talks about Village, but no one talks about this. But this film's got a lot of stuff going on in it. You mentioned the Kent State thing. I mean, now that you mentioned that, my brain just went to another place with what's going on in this film, because you basically have kids against adults in this. The adults are kind of the establishment, and the kids are just trying to find their way. And
one of the kids even says at the end, "You'll go your way, we'll go ours." And that was, I think, right before they all got killed.
Right before the one guy knocks the screwdriver and accidentally sets off the fireworks, and everybody just starts unloading their bullets.
Yeah.
At the end. And now that you say that, though, yeah, I could see that, because the kids throughout, it's like first you have the theme of the kids, and if you have any kids at all, or even fur babies, if you're responsible for another living thing, you can feel occasionally like you're a slave to it. I fully get that. And there is some of that impression in here with the kids controlling the adults. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
early on we get the British smart one, Paul, whose mom is uh just she hates her kid. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, she says it.
yeah, she's right to his face. I'm like sitting there going, if you know your kid can control your mind, I don't think that'd be the things I'd be saying right to your scary kid who could do the scary things. But what'd you think of Paul's mom and her? I mean, are we making a statement now? It is 1964. They can't exactly wear their thoughts out in the open. Are they kind of making a statement a little bit about the single mother in this movie?
I felt so because I mean when the doctors
Mhm.
come to visit, they even as they were leaving, they're like, "Well, he didn't get his intellect from her,"
Oh my
you know,
god.
because what was she was like smoking and kind of flirting and stuff like that, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering right.
Yeah, and
And
the sign on her front said like a photography model. It,
oh, right. And I was like, "Hey, she's trashy. That doesn't mean she's dumb," you know.
right? Well, it is 64 though, and Britain 64. So let's face it, none all the guys are not exactly do not exactly have the highest opinion of any of the females in this movie. It's definitely a sign of its times because they've got that description later on the doctors make about the mother, because Paul, after the mom tells Paul that she hates him and wish she never had him. Never mind the fact she never conceived at all. She just
Mm.
it was immaculate conception. Well, alien conception, they figure, or might be. Um, he basically makes her walk out in front of a truck.
Oh,
Like,
right. Yeah.
it's like, damn. But after that, the doctor's visitor, and he talks about, um, was it? He calls her, she suffers from megalomania and hysterics.
Oh, right.
And I'm just sitting there going, oh, this is so not a movie of today, because someone would reach through the screen and beat the shit out of it. I mean, this does have a sign of its times, though, doesn't it? With especially how the guys are kind of looking at any of the female characters in this
Oh,
movie.
sure. There's also, because I did a little research too.
Mhm.
There's also a little bit of question about the two main doctors because
Oh,
they
thank
do
you.
live together.
Yeah, no, keep going, because
They do
I'm
live together.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
They live together, and they live in the household together. They're not just like roommate. Like they answer the phone. Like they share. There's something there, and there was speculation that maybe they were supposed to be a couple, but since it wasn't like cool to be out in the open, that it was more like in the subtext. And there is a moment I remember kind of towards the end or a little bit later in the film where one of the doctors like is talking to the other doctor and he's concerned and he actually like cups his arm and
Mhm.
kind of lovingly, you know, lovingly squeeze them or something. I don't know. And I was like, okay, I could see that. It's just something that they're not exactly talking about. Um, but also in that, I forget who wrote it or where I
Mhm.
found it, but they had said something about how when the one doctor kind of shows interest in one of the women, the other doctor kind of turns against the children. So there's a
Mhm.
weird kind of displacement of feelings or something, which I didn't like totally see that like 100%, but I did see there was some, I don't know, they had a very close relationship.
It I mean, we are talking again 1964. We're talking Britain 1964. So we're talking very proper things going on. And you're right. Not exactly cool to be gay in 1964 Britain and to portray that on camera. But I'm glad you mentioned it because that was the exact vibe I was getting from these two. I'm like, well, these guys are a couple. You know,
Yeah, there is. You know that one scene where the phone rings and they
mhm.
both kind of come out and they're in their PJs? I mean, that was intimate to me.
Well, yeah,
That wasn't. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
I'm just saying, yeah, you're right. They're very close to the phone. They the way they're standing next to each other, even. Yeah, you're right. It's totally intimate. I'm sorry. It's I'm very glad because I was worried I was maybe reading something more into it than there was, but you mentioning it, that just I'm like, yeah, and that makes me interested with, you
Yeah.
know, because we've talked about it in which film it was one of the Hitchcock films. I think it was Rope. Yeah, Rope, we were talking about it, how, the time that the film came out, you didn't really talk about, especially guys,
Mm,
homosexuals. So filmmakers put it in other ways. And
hmm
I think you're onto something there because I don't know if you noticed, and maybe I'm wrong at it, but the one would seemed overly flirty with anything female.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, like beyond I mean, it's like he was flirty with the aunt, Paul's aunt
hmm
after the mom. He's flirty with the Indian mother when they go to the India embassy. It's like anything female, but it's overly done. And if you look at his partner almost looks uncomfortable.
hmm
And I think you're right that I think these two are maybe subtly implied that they're an item.
It was the arm squeeze that
Hmm.
really that really got me because I just felt like, if they're just colleagues and they're just roommates, it was like it was a it's like he squeezed his arm because he felt concern in the moment and
Hmm.
was trying to give him comfort. And that's something you do to your partner,
Hmm.
your romantic partner, not necessarily like your friend or your like colleague.
Especially again within the context of the film and the times it was, that was definitely, even if you're a really close buddy, not exactly something you expressed.
Right.
You might say something, show concern vocally or whatnot,
Yeah.
hand him a drink, maybe, but you wouldn't squeeze his arm in comfort or, and then later on, like you said, later on when it, I'm not sure if it was hostility towards the kids uh, as much as just he had fear, I think, because he couldn't quite understand the kids. And
Yeah, I think that's smart.
personally, because there's the guy who play Ian Hendry plays Tom Llewellyn, and Tanya, please tell me I'm not the only one who kept looking at him going, Ryan Reynolds. Did
I didn't.
oh, you didn't? Oh, okay, so I am the only one. That's okay. I swear I'm watching this guy going, oh my God, this is like Ryan Reynolds' dad. And then suddenly my mind is recasting this film with Ryan Reynolds and Benedict Cumberbatch and as the two scientists. um, but the Tom Llewellyn character, he was the guy who was he was the I think he was the psychologist, wasn't he? And then David Neville was the geneticist, or one of the two. I forgot which one, but it was interesting too that they were a pairing, that you had a psychologist and a geneticist together all the time.
Together
Um,
all the time. That's the other thing.
they
They're
were.
constantly together. They're
I
at
mean,
work, at home. They were just always together.
yeah, and if they weren't together, they were looking for the other, or uh,
Right.
you could kind of tell they were missing the other or whatnot. They weren't quite the same. So I think you're really onto something that there is some, I think, underlying there's some undertones here for our two doctors that they may have been playing off without actually coming out and saying it, showing it, especially at the end, because throughout the whole thing, these kids, these doctors are trying to protect the kids,
Mhm.
which is another angle that would play into their relationship, adopted kids.
Yeah.
We could run with that further, but at the end, with the one wanting to kill him, the other one talks him down to reason, and they
Right.
kind of have a discussion, not as between two friends, but as a couple argue
And dad.
between mom and dad, or dad in this
Dad
case,
and dad.
dad and dad. So yeah, you're right. The whole relationship between these two is interesting, and yeah, I wouldn't be far off if that was what was kind of intended with these two without actually coming out and saying it, because you couldn't back in that day, because man, you would have just been ostracized
Right.
by the culture. I think 'cause even in 64 they weren't that open-minded.
Right. And
um
I noticed some other things too, like the mom, Paul's
mhm,
mom,
mhm.
it, instead of coming straight out and saying, I never had sexual intercourse, so there's no way I could have had a child. Like she just keeps repeating, I haven't been touched. I haven't been touched. And it's like, because she repeats it so many times, it makes you go, oh, she means sex. But it's like of the day, like you couldn't come out and it would be too vulgar, probably.
It would have been a little too vulgar or too direct. Yeah, she can't just say, "No, I've never been stooped." You know, yeah, I've never been touched. Yeah, she has that, and then, the other. You find out most of the other ones, which follows the line of Village of the Damned, where the whole village, all the women suddenly become just pregnant overnight. Similar here, but this is like years later after that has happened in a way. Um, with each one of these, because each one of their moms, the US one, his mom died, so he was with his grandma, who
Mm.
was played by actually a silent film actress. She'd do a few other like horror films in that, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, you had Mark, who he was with his grandmother, so he was still with a female, though he
Hmm.
wasn't with his dad. Every one, well, except the Russian. Go figure. The girl is with her dad,
Mm.
who's not her dad. I mean, that, the Russian angle, and then they got into the other things. It really suddenly, I'm watching this film thinking it's going to be a quirky cult film about kids who can control adults, which you do have that part, but then you get this whole other thing with Cold War, and they're going to know each other's secrets. And
Oh, right. Yeah.
what'd you think about that kind of subplot going on, where the embassy people are suddenly worried for the kids, and how they all want to bring them home, until they realize, oh wait, they could all share each other's secrets, and suddenly it's like, oh,
Right.
you know what'd you think about that whole storyline? Did you think that worked as well, and was that surprising in a film like this?
I I I thought it was kind of surprising, but yeah, it was kind of like I felt like it was like of its time, kind of.
Hmm.
Like I don't think that would be something in a script today.
Hmm. the, the
Um,
the
yeah,
paranoia, you mean?
yeah, I think it really was of its time. And the interesting thing was it was the United Nations trying to figure out something with all these children from different cultures. So yeah, there was a lot of subtexts going on, a lot of stuff that was going on that was completely different than Village of the Damned, because Village of the Damned was really just a creepy story. It was just, and it was creepier. I think Village of the Damned was more successful in some ways because it was creepier.
Hmm.
But Children of the Damned had more like social commentary stuff in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's more like of its time probably, and more of a social commentary.
It is definitely. I mean, because you have Mark from the US, you have another child from China, you had another child from Nigeria, one from Britain, and then one from Russia, which I thought were interesting countries to pick. I'm like, okay. And one from India. So you
Mhm.
had these kids from all these different major powers at the time. Well, except Nigeria was. I mean, it was um it was interesting, the diversity that they picked for a film of this time, the diversity in children, because like you mentioned, Children of the Dam, all the kids looked the same.
Mhm.
They were all creepy, all looked the same. Here we have kids of different nationalities, different countries completely. And no, this isn't in the US. So, hey, we have the United Nations instead of just the US government being bad. We have all the governments being bad.
Yeah.
And, and, and all these kids and diverse group who all think the same, who all have this same connection. You look at it going, wow, is there some subtext going on in here? Because here you have a younger generation who's thinking alike, and it's different than the countries. They don't care about what nationality they are. They all think the same. They all have the same beliefs, and the
Right.
rest of the world seems to have a problem with it.
Right, yeah.
Never mind the
And they're
fact,
all afraid.
huh?
They don't just have a problem with it, they're afraid of them.
Right. Because these kids represent change to pretty much what their entire belief system, because they're so different and so smart. They're like the next 100th evolution of human.
Mhm. And that was one of their theories,
Hmm.
that they were maybe an evolutionary step.
Right. And that scared them. But then again, that goes along with kind of that theme of young generation versus old generation. To go along with it. And I think that is definitely a sign of its times. And then also the Cold War, the whole, well, we don't want just one person to have this weapon, aka the kids. So we're all going to have it so that no one uses it. That was a little too on the head for me as far as that. Did it seem a little too on the head about nuclear weapons, the kids as nuclear weapons, basically?
Well, I'm used to that. I mean, yes, in
Mhm,
this day and age, yes, but I'm kinda used to that from older films. I
mhm.
accept it more, I think, in films, I don't know, from the 50s and 60s for some reason, than I do, because I feel like the writing in films should, like, grow just like we as a society grow, kinda.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there were a lot of social commentary things that were, like, blatant. But for me, I accept it more because
Mm.
it's in black and white. No, I don't know. It was acceptable to me for some reason.
Well, I think it's because you watch a lot of films, you make films and such, and you realize where this is coming from. This was in a day and age where um, your audience only got its worldly information. Well, by the 60s, it was TV as well, but they still were limited in their understanding of the rest of the world. I mean, now some people have it open to them where they can understand the rest of the world. They just don't want to. but
That's true.
but but back then, you may have had people who wanted to learn the rest of the world, but didn't exactly
No
have
way,
right. So you
right?
had to kind of, I think, be on the nose so people got it, because you realize the audience you're going for, in all honesty, may not exactly be that knowledgeable in
That's
things.
true, yeah.
And that's another thing I think with making the kids highly intelligent. we still have that today, or correct me if I'm wrong, but we have that today. I think where still people with high intelligence, even today's day and age, are feared in many ways.
I do see, people kind of tearing down people that are intelligent and saying they're elitist. I've
Mhm.
seen that happen, which it's like I feel like that's just somebody feeling incompetent next to them.
Okay, sure. So instead of
Although,
fear, it's
oh,
incompetence, but
I think so. I mean, although there are people and things that happen that are elitist, but when somebody's intelligent and it's showing, that's not elitist.
right.
That's
Yeah,
just being intelligent. And some people, I think, feel insecure next to that.
right. Intimidated and or insecure or less worthy, though that intelligent person hasn't done a thing to the person.
Right.
They're off doing their thing. They hardly even acknowledge this person because they don't know him, yet the person feels less of a person just because of the existence of that intelligent person. And that's what I kind of got in this film was the adults, especially some of the military minded ones, felt they were afraid because I think they felt less, you know, because nearly all the actions of all the kids only happen when after they're attacked.
Yeah, I noticed that was a big difference between this film and Village of the Damned because
Hmm.
in Village of the Damned, they're kind of straight up evil
Hmm.
in that movie. Kind of. I mean, they don't harm for the fun of it,
Right.
but they don't make any differentiation between like I won't harm you because you're a nice person. they they basically like, are you in my way? Boom, you're dead.
Right.
They don't care. They just don't want you to stop them from doing their master plan or whatever it is. Um, and in this film, in Children of the Damned, it really was more ambiguous.
Hmm.
And I mean, I felt like that had to be on purpose to fit in with everything that was going on and all the social commentary. But it was very ambiguous. Are the kids bad or are they just trying to survive?
Right. Is it just because they're different? They do things a different way, they think a different way, and they all went to the church to try to hide out because they all recognized they were causing fear amongst people. So they went to the church,
Hmm.
and you get at one point one of the scientists, I think, asks them, "What's your purpose here?" And they said, "We don't know."
Mm. Yeah, it was really interesting. It's like the kids were trying to figure themselves out just as much as the adults were.
Right. The kids weren't exactly sure who they were or what, which, we've all been there. We were all teenagers trying to find our identity,
Hmm.
went through many different changes uh, before we kind of found what we were comfortable with each other. And here, one of the kids just straight out says, "We're not sure our purpose here. We just are. We are just this way." And the adults just couldn't accept that. it's,
Hmm.
it's like, well, they got to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, why? Well, because they're smart and intelligent and they could be used as weapons by other adults. So we have to destroy them. Which then prompted them to do probably the thing that is closest to the children in Village of the Damned is they go back to their embassies and basically kill the people who wanted to take them back to their countries. Oh, what'd you think of that section? I mean, the scientists talk to Paul, and then all of a sudden they go to their various embassies and actually just murder the people there.
It just, I think it was more social commentary.
Hmm.
It was more that like commenting on how countries go to war against each other and will kill people of another country, just because of fears, because of like tactics. But it all
Hmm.
comes down to like, I'm using these tactics against you because of deep down essentially just a fear.
Right. And I'm wondering if at the core of this whole film is just really portraying Cold War fears and fears of the young wanting to change things that was the status quo for so long.
It could be. I mean, there is a real marked difference. I mean, the fact that, and you mentioned it, the fact that, in Village of the Damned, they all look the same. There's
Mhm.
like a oneness to it, and it really adds to the creep out quality of that film. But in this film, they didn't. They
Mhm.
just looked like children of different nationalities, but they were very much like a child of this country, a child of with this culture, and so, and that, I think that was definitely on purpose.
Yeah, to have them diverse this time, yet thinking the same, which,
Mhm.
yeah, it has more of the impact. Though we do still get creepy kid eyes.
Yes.
So
Thank goodness.
we had to have creepy kid eyes. So I mean, we get there and even the kids, they only kill people because they're protecting themselves, which the adults seem to be missing that point. But the one uh fully right, because the guy killed a dog.
Mm.
So he totally needed to die. It was like when I saw the one guy kill the dog, I'm like, oh shit, he's dead. Like, there's no like just paralyzing you or making you walk out into traffic to get crippled. No, you're gonna die. You shot the kid's dog. And sure enough, they made the one guy shoot the other guy and then made him jump off onto a wrought iron fence.
Yeah.
So maybe there is still a little evil in them, or yeah. So that's a good. Is there kills, and later on they make a device that actually doesn't kill; it just paralyzes guys with the audio, which actually is really impressive for a film of this age because it bugged the hell out of me. The audio they picked. Um, do they kill and do the things they do because they're have a little streak of evil in them, or is it just their youth and their lack of control act? They're very emotional because they're younger, and that's just their way of solving the problem, but it's not an evil act, it's just the way they feel they have to do to get the thing resolved. You know what I'm saying? It's not actually an act of evil so much as just, well, this is what they have the person do because that's the way they think it needs to be done, rather than, oh, I'm going to kill him because I enjoy it. Because I don't think they enjoyed any of the kills they did. Do you think?
Yeah. I don't think so. I think that just the fact that they had the power to do something like that was enough to scare all
Mhm.
the adults around them. But I think it was deliberately ambiguous
Mhm.
to make, I mean, that because the ending is so heart-wrenching if you wonder about the children at all, you know?
Right. And they do a good job of at least painting at least some sympathy for the children, you realize, well, maybe they are just defending themselves. These aren't like the kids from the village. Uh,
Mhm.
these aren't like the village kids. Uh, these kids are just trying to survive and find their way. They aren't pure, straight up evil. Uh, but they still have these powers and they are kids, and kids can be scary. Trust me, I know they could be very scary. Uh, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily evil, but it can be perceived as evil by adults if you just take the act itself of what they do,
Mhm.
and not understand, I think, the individual. And yeah, you're right. The ending it's like it's heart wrenching because the kids all stand out in front of the church knowing the adults, they can read their minds. They know what these guys are going to probably do. And they sit there and they all hold hands. And even the one that got killed uh, is back alive, freaked it,
Yeah.
which freaked everyone out even more. And you know, uh, yeah, I thought that was interesting where they locked, hands in that. And what did you think about the kid coming back alive, the one who was shot dead after the noise machine went off?
Well, I didn't actually put this together.
Mhm.
I thought, okay, they kind of brought him back to life with their sort of magic, like
Yeah.
their collective Borg magic or something. But now that I'm thinking about it, could they have survived? At,
Oh, after they were buried.
yeah, I mean, is that possible? Because the one kid did come back to life. I just assumed, that they were all dead, so that
Mhm.
was it. But
Well,
now I'm thinking.
yeah, you bring up a great point. That's Man, I love this discussion. You brought up another great just point. My brain is going off too, that maybe they did survive because they do kind of set it up earlier with showing the one cell absorbing the other human cell.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, do have the regenerative quality, which then makes me suddenly want to see Return of the Children of the Damned, which never was made, folks. I'm just making that up. But where they suddenly come back to life because they regenerated.
Hmm.
Are they truly dead, or was that their sign of giving up trying to change the world, and they're just going to let themselves die and not come back?
That's
It,
that's how I took it when I saw it.
mhm.
But now I'm like,
Maybe they died, and then when everybody left, they snuck out.
yeah,
Uh,
they just came back to life and ran off somewhere.
they pulled a Highlander. They opened up their body bag and ran away, and it just and who's gonna say, man, them dead kids ran away? What? Why aren't you guys living together? Saving money on rent.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's more convenient to drive to
it's
work together.
it it's interesting too. The one person we did mention but haven't gone too much in, and I just want to talk about for a minute, was Barbara Ferris's character, Suzanne Elliott, the aunt who Paul enlists to help them.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting because at first she was under their control, but they didn't keep her under control all the time.
Mhm.
They let her be free just enough when they needed something, but then you get that scene. And Tanya, what did you think of that scene where they get the food? They convince the military, please just give us some food. So they get the basket of food, and so then they enlist Susan to help cut up the food, and she's sitting there with the I think it was the Asian the Asian
Yeah.
kid, and she picks it. She's holding the sharp knife. And what'd you think of that whole scene where the kid just looks at her and she gives up the knife and takes the butter knife? I mean,
Yeah, that was really interesting. That was like some tension between I think that stood for the tension between her and all the kids.
mhm,
But yeah, that was interesting. It's like she didn't want to leave them to their own devices, but she didn't always want to do what they wanted her to, and then they would just make her. And I think I think she was maybe giving in at that moment.
mhm.
Like, yeah, I know you're gonna have your way, so and I'm not gonna leave, so
And she's
Yep.
gripping that knife, the bread knife, like do I go and stab this one of the kids in front of me and run? And the kid just looks at her like, I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you're right. They don't control her to force her to turn up, the knife or whatever. She just like, yeah, here.
Yeah.
You just
She's like, "What am I gonna do?"
you guys can control me. Yeah, all right. I'll spread the butter and you cut the bread. That's fine. I could still do damage with a butter knife, but no. Uh, but she resigns herself to it. But then, i- did you get the impression with her character though that even though she was being held basically against her will and forced to make the beds for the kids, and that part of her did not mind and actually wanted to stay to take care of them?
I did think that, and I assumed it was because one of the kids was her nephew.
Right.
I felt like she'd really actually cared for never like when she went over to the house to care for him, they didn't have the bad relationship that he had with his mother.
Yeah.
She seemed to be happily taking care of him, and they seemed to have a good relationship. Just that's how it seemed to me anyway. And I felt like she wanted to kind of part of her wanted to make sure the children were being cared for.
Hmm.
She didn't seem super happy to be there, but she didn't seem terribly traumatized.
She had a little bit of almost motherly instinct that
Motherly, yeah.
because even though they scared the shit out of her, and because they could control her at any time, she also wanted to care for them because they were still kids. I
Mhm.
mean, highly intelligent kids and control you and make you walk into traffic kids, but brings whole new meaning to the word timeout. I'm just, no, Paul, you don't have to get a timeout. No, I was joking. I was joking. No, really. Oh no, don't.
Here's the thing, she seemed to have a more intimate relationship with them, and she also seemed not to be as fearful of them.
Yeah,
Maybe in moments, but not overall.
she at times where she was afraid, it was almost like she was more concerned of the results of their actions rather than them
Right.
doing the action, because she knew what might happen to them, and she didn't actually want them shot or killed at
Mhm.
all. But at the same time, she's like, I don't exactly like being held here either, guys. Paul, I could do this without you making like the puppet master on me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an interesting film. This is one of those where it was a blind watch. I'm glad I picked it though, because there's more going on in here than I fully expected with a film titled Children of the Damned.
Right.
What about you? Did it just kind of surprise you at all how much is going on here, especially considering how the first one was pretty much a straight up horror film?
It really surprised me. I mean, it was it had elements of the original story,
Hmm.
but definitely was taken to a new level, and I was not expecting that. I really just thought it was gonna be and apparently I thought I'd seen this at one point. I thought it was gonna be, like, a couple years later, and either the kids are back or there's new kids that didn't get killed, and then they're trying to take over. I thought it was just gonna be more of the same,
Right.
and I honestly think because I'd seen Village of the Damned a bunch of times, that I just thought that I'd seen more than one movie, but but, um, but yeah, I mean, Village of the Damned, I love that movie, I think it's really great, and, it is really creepy, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of scenes that are real creep out scenes, which Children of the Damned doesn't really have, but it has other stuff. I mean, it's like the social commentary stuff, the things that it makes you think about, what's morally right or morally ambiguous, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So to me, it was coming from a different place completely, but using the same elements or using the wrapper of the
Right.
Village of the Damned the elements. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's same concept. It's just like, okay, what if we have these type of kids, but put them in not a small village all around each other at once, but just have them, be random occurrences around the world, and how would the world react to them?
Right. Like,
But
yeah, it's like a larger scope. Like, how does the social what yeah, like how does the world and all of its different societal parts react to this?
right, and I think it's an interesting exploration into it. I enjoyed this film a hell of a lot more than I thought I would. I mean, I thought I was going to dig it. I'm like, okay, this is cool, 60s horror, quote unquote. Um, there are a couple scenes that are horror-esque, like the kids controlling the guy jumping on the wrought iron, or the noise machine,
Mhm.
or where they, took control of someone. Those parts are creepy. I don't,
Yeah.
but you're right. it is really a different overall tone and message in a lot of ways than Village of the Dam. Like they were trying to do more with it. Like, hey, we got this great concept, but I bet we could do more with it. It's like they're really trying to expand on it. And I don't think we get another of the Damned films, unfortunately. Though
Right.
this is
Yeah.
highly British.
Yeah. It is very much of its time, but I think even in that way, it's really interesting
Yeah,
too. You know, it brings universal ideas, but then there's like things of its time. But I think that's like a time capsule worth also watching.
definitely, because I mean, you've got the paranoia, you got the Cold War stuff in there, you got the country tensions between countries, you got so many things going on in this, and then you got creepy kids with glowy eyes. It's like, wow, it's you're right. It is a time capsule where it does have a few themes that could carry over to today, but it is something that gives you a window of people's different views of the time of the youth changing things
Hmm.
because we're talking the 60s, we're talking just before the big movements and the changes and the impact of the kids, the baby boomers basically getting older and totally having a different approach than their parents of the 40s and 50s. The looser kids, the more free kids, the not so much held to your station in life, you know, type of thing. And because I don't foresee, because there were two female kids, and I don't foresee them being an old Barbara Billingsley pearls and heels vacuuming types. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just you're right. It's a time capsule, and I really dug it. Did you really dig this film overall? Did it surprise you?
I liked it, and it did surprise me. It wasn't what it presented itself to be. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? It was more. It was more. Yeah.
The trailer, because you can find at least the trailer for this film everywhere, plays it up a little more to the horror elements, and then you're watching it going, wait, there's more here than just that.
Right.
This is more than just your second, your double feature film second showing film going on. And
Right.
yeah, I think it's fun, it's interesting, not exactly action packed, so but it's got creepy elements, but there's still a lot going on in this film. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on, Tanya, we maybe didn't talk about, that stood out for you or whatnot?
Did you know I told I did a little research before, just a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
that's good. I'm glad. I unfortunately did not, so that's great.
so this might be a surprise to you. So the writer of the screenplay, did you know he also wrote Gandhi?
No, really?
Interesting, huh? When I
Wow.
when I saw that and I saw the film, I was like, "Oh, okay. I could see that. That's
Well,
interesting."
and now that you mention it, there's a picture of Gandhi
Right, there is a picture of Gandhi.
in the film. There's a
Yeah.
picture in the Indian embassy. There's a picture of Gandhi. Now that you
Right.
mention it, I'm wondering if they did that because the author was maybe a fan of Gandhi.
Sure. Yeah,
Wow,
it's
that's
interesting, huh?
that's really interesting. Which then leads to a whole other level of the meaning and subtext and things you've got going on, and how, yeah, it's this film's got a lot going on in it. And I think especially if you understand when it was made,
Right.
you can see where it's coming from and realize this, especially for it being a British film. I mean, no, MGM produced it, but it was all shot in Britain.
Mhm.
It's kind of a bold movie.
Yeah. It actually, you know, when you think about the time, the era, yeah,
For
there's
what?
a
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's a lot going on, a lot of subtext.
Yeah,
I would say the movie is primarily subtext, really.
there's more subtext than there is really narrative story, because
Right.
at its surface it's just creepy kids trying to get away.
Right.
And then you get all this subtext and all this extra subplots and characters and messages in it, but at its core it's about creepy kids just wanting to be left alone.
And that part isn't as good as the Village of the Damned creepy kid stuff.
Right.
You know, like the flat out kind of like outer plot. It isn't done as well, but that's really not the core of this film, I don't think.
No, this film is actually just being a voice for the filmmakers. And they just happen to be using what was a popular concept, because Village of the Dam got such a following, I think, that they were using that concept. And like you said, they had the rights to it.
Yeah, I bet.
It was a rights thing too. So it's like, yeah, hey, let's do this. Though you don't get a lot of, and so that's why I guess we'll close it out for the night. But that's why I just give a little warning to folks that don't go into Children of the Dam expecting a creepy sequel to Village of the Damned, because we really only get one truly creepy glowy eye kid scene, and that's because the guys killed the dog.
Yeah.
So they totally deserved the glowy eye,
They thought what was coming to them.
They did. I know for sure our good friend Scott Davis, who's a regular in the spoiler room, he would totally agree with that one. Though he probably wouldn't watch this because it does have a dog getting shot and killed. So yeah. So that's tough. The kid's okay. Yeah. All right, the kid gets shot. What do you do? Oh man, the dog. It's funny how that works, but so yeah. Well, I thank you, Tanya, for sitting in with me on this tonight, and watching this film and realizing it was a film you hadn't watched, which is okay, because I had just the opposite. I had picked a film at the beginning of the year that is a film I didn't think I watched, and I had watched. So
see, I think when you watch as many movies as you and I both do, you end up having those moments,
Well, you try to remember what you've watched, but yeah, it is tough sometimes. Well, because at the beginning of the year we did the one, and I was like, oh, this got Adam West in it. Holy crap, I got it. And then I was watching it, like 2 minutes in, I'm like, I've watched this already. I didn't like this film.
No, that's the worst.
That was one of those where I don't remember liking this film. Oh no. Oh great. Okay.
You're like, this looks interesting, which is probably what prompted you to see it the first time. The same thing. And then you're like, oh man, this one.
Yeah, because it had Thor from Rock and Roll Nightmare, and it had Adam West. So I'm like, that's a natural that you have to watch that. And then I realized you're right. You do have to watch it. I've watched it already.
Oh no. So, which one was that? Which film was that?
That was, oh man, now I forgot. Dawn had mentioned it because it had Adam West. She's a big Adam West fan. So it escapes me right now. It was right at the beginning of the year. I've made just a few videos and such since then.
Oh, okay, I want to see. Put a link because I want to see that one.
Yeah, Zombie Nightmare. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that film.
Yeah, Zombie Nightmare stars. Oh, that's what it was, because it stars Adam West, Jean-Michael Thor, and Tia Carrera in one of her first roles. And
I haven't seen that one.
Right, and so that cast, I'm like, oh shit, this is a natural Mark film. I gotta watch it. And it was okay. My second time around, I had a little more appreciation for it, but for me, though, still, it's a kind of a challenging watch, and it was just one of those where I picked it and I realized, oh, wait, I've watched this already. So it was just the opposite of what you had, but I'm glad you enjoyed the film, even if it was one you thought you had seen and you hadn't. So I'm glad you enjoyed Children of the Damned. And Yeah, would you recommend this to someone who enjoys Village of the Damned?
Um, well, I mean, for me, it worked. So I
Right.
think I would, but I think I would with the caveat, like
Hmm.
this is really more social commentary subtext using a similar theme. It's not really, like I said, what I read somewhere, it was a thematic sequel. It's not a true sequel, and it's not
Hmm.
even a true retelling of the story. It's
No,
it's using the shell of the story to tell something else.
yeah, it's just like taking the same characters but just tossing them in a completely different situation. Without even trying to rehash the original story at all. It is distant from that, but it is interesting. And I dug it. This was one I could see, not right away, but I could see myself down the road or two sitting down and watching it, or watching it with a buddy of mine I know who enjoys Doc. He enjoys classic films, especially British ones. And I don't know if he's seen this one yet or not, but this is one I could see sitting down with him and watching again. It'd be one where definitely if I run into someone who hasn't seen it, I'd sit down and watch it with them and, get their opinion as well, because I'd be interested to see what they catch. But
I would watch this again for sure.
mhm.
Like
Yeah,
not anytime soon, like you said, but like there is so much subtext in it, and I feel like just from our conversation, I feel like there's stuff I didn't 100% get just from casually viewing once. I would definitely see it again.
yeah, there's definitely things in here I know I probably missed the first viewing around, and it's one of those films where once you realize what type of movie it is, with all the subtext and message and stuff, it's worth going back, after some time and revisiting it, just to see if you can catch more, or any hints of, well, our doctor friends actually more than just really close buddies.
I gotta watch it again. Look for the signs.
look for this look for the signals. So, well, thank you, Tanya. And now at every point in my show, I give a license to shill. So this is where you get a chance to tell my listeners where they can find all your wonderful stuff at.
I am on social media as Tanya Atomic. It's TONJIA Atomic. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, and I've cleaned up my YouTube page. I'm so proud of myself. I've organized it, and I've started doing a blog more often. So yeah, so follow me on YouTube as well, and I actually have full short films up there too, so for free.
Awesome. Yes, check out short films. You should see short films. They're awesome. I'm a big supporter of short films and feature indie films, which Tanya is involved in, and she's got one, Manus Returns. You folks out there, go see that film. That's so much fun.
It's not
Love.
out.
Oh, it's not. I thought it was on VOD. Did you guys not get distribution yet? I'm sorry. I
We're
thought you
still
had.
we're still in talks, but it's
Ah.
soon. We've got I can't even say anything, but we've
No,
got
no, no, that's fine. No, don't.
talks coming up soon.
Okay.
And so this year, I think something will happen. It's done. We've
Mhm.
done festivals, we've done theatrical screenings, we've also done Kickstarter backer DVDs and Blu-rays. But we're just waiting to secure something, and we are
Awesome.
in talks with
Someone.
distributors. So we'll just have to figure it out. But I think this year
Awesome.
sometime. Yeah.
Well, I am sorry, my listeners, I misspoke. I was so excited. I want you folks to see this film because it's a lot of fun. So, yeah. So keep an eye out. Follow Tanya so you know when this is going to be available to the masses, because the master would approve. So you got to see it for Torgo, if nothing else. Torgo. So, well, thank you again. And now I think we'll just say good night.
Good night.
Good night. All right, thanks. Thank you very much. I
Thanks.
sorry at the beginning there if I jumped a little bit, but I was so excited that the fact that you were saying things that I actually hit as well, and I was trying not to, and I apologize totally for if I stepped
Oh
on
no.
you
I
at
think
all.
isn't it interesting? I mean, like all the, like, we're talking about subtext. It's just so interesting to me that the writer put all that stuff in there. I mean, maybe some of it wasn't intentional, but I think most of it was.
I'd like to think so. I'll give them credit, and I'd like to think so because artists being who they are, and writers, they put a lot of themselves usually into stuff they write. I honestly think that there's stuff in here that he was trying to slide in subtly,
Yeah.
that who he was targeting would pick up on it, and who he wasn't targeting with it would totally be oblivious. So,
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, especially of that era. Like, I
Mhm.
really
Well,
think, when you see stuff like, I don't know, like documentaries on like hidden gay cinema and stuff, it's exactly that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
right. And that's one of the things why I love doing these discussions with fine, knowledgeable folks like you, and the crew that I have, and exploring some of these older films that, in all honesty, a lot of people don't go back to. And I've had this discussion with a number of people, where I'm not throwing digs out at all at YouTube reviewers and fellow movie, quote unquote, internet movie reviewers, but I wonder how many of them would go back and watch a film like Children of the Dam, or even, Casablanca. How far back would they actually go to watch a film? And having watched stuff now to review and looking at a little bit deeper, I'm finding a lot of stuff in these early films, especially like you mentioned, the kind of hidden gay cinema. It's like, wow, it was right there.
It's interesting too. Like, I don't know if you've seen a lot of pre-code films, but it's
Mhm.
interesting too, the shift of like early, like some of the early films are a little more risque than you would imagine, because you think old films are all wholesome, but no, that was more of a 50s. Like, they decided we're going to make everything clean and leave it to Beaver it.
Oh
But
yeah, the '50s conservative era
yeah,
really set
it
things
messed
back.
everything up. Yeah, set things back. But yeah, it's interesting. It really is interesting when you go back and look at that stuff. It's like one of the things I mean, I love movies, so of course I just
Mhm,
love watching movies, but one of the other things I like is being able to see the culture reflected,
mhm.
in the films, but I wouldn't necessarily know about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I'm doing the Godzilla for whatever crazy reason. I committed myself to watching all the Toho films in chronological order, this month. But one of the things I noticed was the roles of women in the film,
Mm.
and we've touched on it here on our show with some past ones where we covered some early 50s, late 50s, early 60s sci-fi, where it kind of surprises you. You're like, holy crap, we actually have, for the times at least, a strong female character who's a scientist and
Mm.
knows her stuff, or has a role who's more than just a damsel in distress. She's contributing, and it kind of surprises you because I think a lot of times that was non-existent back then, when
Mhm.
it actually was. It just maybe was handled a little bit differently so that they could get away with it, or put it just in a cult film that no one paid attention to.
It wouldn't be mainstream viewed.
Right.
Yeah.
Faster pussycat kill kill, let's go. uh, um, but no, the 40s, the 50s, especially because you look at some of those 20s and 30s films. And even it's funny because we had a display here. They got a little historical society in Point here, and they were doing a feature on World War I, and they had a whole wall of contributions made by women during World War I. And I feel bad, but it kind of blew my mind because I'm like, holy crap. And then you see posts on Facebook too of, like, a whole women's platoon of who were assassins type of thing, who were sharpshooters and shit. You don't hear about that after World War II because the 50s white conservative male.
50s.
Huh?
I said the fucking 50s.
Right?
Although I do love some of the pop culture, but yeah, it's like they whitewashed everything and made history like not real or something. I don't know.
Right. It made you forget that actually, and I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, oh my God, everything was a lot more equal for genders, but there was a shift after World War II to the perception of the role of women particularly, but just other people in general, folks of alternative lifestyles or just different after World War II. It was like, it's suddenly like things that were not really turned down, just ignored, but not really rejected either, are suddenly like verboten, like forbidden, like no. I mean, it's like you said, you picture a black and white film, you don't think of nudity. And I ran into that until I watched, I think it was it The Beast of Yucca Flats? I think that was it, or one of them where there was a topless scene like within the first 5 minutes, like not just bra, and I'm just like, holy crap. I'm like, what year is this? Holy shit. But yeah, film, as long as film's been around, there's been subversive material made. So yeah, well, thank you, Tanya, very much. I appreciate it. This will be out probably at the end of the week.
Okay, sounds great.
I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, this is fun. So we're doing Scanners next week. So I don't know if you're free for it, but I know Dawn's going to be in on that. We've got a number of people selected for it, but if you do want in on that, we should have room. So
check my schedule. I think next week's going to be a busy one.
Busy for you? Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, next week's busy. So
okay.
I love Cronenberg.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey because I was only mostly familiar with like The Fly and Naked Lunch, and now I'm
you're going back to some of the early ones, and you're like, what?
Well, and Rabid, I should say, I was very familiar with Rabid and Scanners, but those are kind of the more popular ones. But watching a couple of his early ones, like Shivers and like
Shivers, I love Shivers.
Crime of the Century just boggled my mind. I watched that, and I was glad I had Andrew Shearer on that one because he helped me on that one because I was just like, this scrambled my head. Huh?
I haven't seen that one.
It's actually online. I guess it's an extra on a number of the Cronenberg Blu-rays, but it's on YouTube, the full movie. It's his first film. I think it was his student film or whatever. Cool. It's like an hour long, but you watch it and you're just like, wow, he really has kept his style throughout things, but it's a watch. I think you dig it.
Check that out.
But it is one too that you just gotta sit. But yeah, Crimes of the Century is on YouTube. That's how I watched it, and I got done and I just sat there going, what in the hell? Like, wow. So all right, well, we will talk to you later.
Okay, have a great night.
Thanks, Tanya. You too.
All right, bye-bye. Bye.